we're going to add in one more button. The last button that we're going to do, that is a play button, where it goes and throws a ball to that virtual pet. The virtual pet throws it back, and we control it with the video sensing again, right? All of those things. And it's going to work well and be really cool. So let's go ahead, for those of you continuing, and add in that last button. Our sprite section is getting a little crowded down here, but that's okay. It's going to go down to the next line. So I'm going to right click on one of mine. It really doesn't matter which one. Right click and duplicate. And that'll give me another sprite down here. First thing, let's get rid of that existing code to it. And then second, we want to go and name it play. Or you could name it fetch if you want. I like that even a little bit better. Fetch. Now, when we go and do the costume, we click on the costume tab, and in this time, we need to change something around just a little bit, because remember I said our space is a little bit smaller? So what I'm actually going to do first is I'm going to use my eraser tool, and I'm going to cut off about a quarter of the rectangle on the left side and a quarter of the rectangle on the right side. That will make it so that that button stays centered on the center of the sprite. If I just chopped off one side, it would be off center. But I estimate, right, about a quarter of the button using my eraser tool and erase it. And then a quarter over here, use my eraser tool and erase it. Okay, and then you go and select your rectangle tool, pick the color you'd like. In my case, I want a white here, a white button, and go ahead and draw a rectangle. And if you went a little uneven on your eraser, drawing this rectangle is going to even it up really well, and it's why I did it in the order that I did it, because if you went off a little bit, drawing that rectangle that way will make it aligned better. Okay, and then on this rectangle, oops, let me undo. I just realized I missed a little of the top edge. And then after you have that, we're going to go to our text tool, pick the color that we like, in my case red, pick the font that we like, and on that button type, it could be fetch, it could be play, it could be whatever you want. And then stretch out the text to fill in that button. And this is going to be a little different size than the others, but it's no big deal. Okay, so mine's good. That's what I'd like. And now I'm going to drag it down into the correct position right here at the bottom, lined up with the others. And that fetch button is ready. Okay, now we have the costume that we want for the button. We need one more costume for the actual object that the monkey can go and fetch. Now, I have one from the sprite library, and there's a couple of other choices. You could also paint one of your own. You could paint a little toy, paint a bone, paint something that you like. It's up to you. But I'm going to go to this choose a costume magnifying glass. And I'm going to use a tennis ball, something I've commonly played with pets with. If you wanted to choose a baseball, a basketball, these other multicolored balls here, if you want to choose something that's like food, whatever you want to choose. You could have your virtual pet go fetch a donut, which we used for the last one. It could go fetch a duck if you wanted it to. But I'm going to look for the tennis ball, and it is, I could have typed it in too, but I'm just looking for it in alphabetical order, and it's right here. So I'm going to click on that tennis ball. And we see that the tennis ball actually comes in pretty small, which I was a little surprised by. I thought it was going to be bigger. It comes in pretty small. I'm going to remember that for when we go and do our coding, because I'm going to add in a little something else to make that appear bigger once we're ready to use it. Okay, now we are ready to do our coding, so let's go to the code tab for this button, the fetch or play button. And we have to add in two events. So let's go to our events section, add in a when the green flag is clicked, and also add in a when this sprite is clicked. Okay, for our when the green flag is clicked, we're going to put in a couple of those initialization or setup things. And the first is under motion, a go to. Now, since we already have it in position, we look down here and we see it's at 224 and negative 159, and that matches because it's going to match whatever spot it's already in. Now, one thing, as I said, I noticed that tennis ball came in really small. I'm going to do to make it so that it always starts this size with this costume, But then in a minute, it's going to get bigger when we go to actually click on it and use it as a ball. I'm going to add in a looks, switch costume to, and make sure it's always set to the one that's the button, which for me is costume 1. And then I look down here at my sprite properties and I see that the size is at a 40. So what I want to do is I want to go to set size, and it defaults to 100%. I want to make that match so it always comes in at the right size for the button, and that's going to be 40. Look at yours, because yours could be slightly different. Look at yours number right here. Whatever number that sprite is set to as the button that fits well, that's the number that you want right here. And from the looks category, we also want a show, because we want that sprite to show every time that we click on the green flag. Okay, so that's done for the setup. And now, what do we want to happen when the sprite is clicked? Well, the first thing that we want to happen is we want to turn the video on, because remember I said we're going to use video sensing for this sprite, similar to what we did for the Pet Me sprite. So I'm going to go to my video sensing group right here and turn the video on. Okay, at the same time that I do that, I want to go to looks, and you might have to scroll up and down to get to those categories since we added video sensing. I want to go to looks, and I want to switch my costume to tennis ball. And I also want to increase the size. So down in looks, where we just use size 40%, we want to go and increase that size. So set size to, and let's estimate we want to change it to about 80%. That'll basically double the size of that tennis ball. Okay, so those take care of those two, when the green flag is clicked and when this sprite is clicked. Now, we need to add one last one, because we're going to use video recognition for when we have motion on that sprite to make it look like we kind of throw that ball, or give us that feeling. Of course, it's not real, it's not exact, but give us the feeling like our hand is actually reaching up and swatting or slapping or throwing that ball. And it goes through an animation and interacts with the monkey. So let's go back to our video sensing and add over a when the motion is greater than. And if you remember about this number, this is a tolerance, right? 10 is very low. We want to make that tolerance a little higher at about a 40. Okay, this is our third code section under that fetch button. And then we want the ball to glide out somewhere onto the stage. And I'll talk about where in a second, but let's go to motion in that group and go glide 1 second to. Okay, and then it has the coordinates, connect that. Now, we're going to put two random functions in here, and I'll explain in a second, but let's go get that random function from our operators and drag it over 1, 2 times. The first one we're going to put in the X oval right here for what X coordinates. The reason that we're using random is because we could have it just go to the same spot every time. It throws it to here, the monkey throws it back. Throws it to here, the monkey throws it back. It's a little more interesting though when it's random. Now, you could have some choice here of where in the stage you're going to allow it to go. I'm going to limit it to the grass over here in this section above my buttons, right? So if you look at where I'm circling the mouse around right now, I'm going to make it so that that ball pretty much always goes right here, but in any random spot right there. So I'm going to tell you the numbers that I will use to make it so that it goes to a random spot in this area of the screen. If you experimented with different ones to have it go all over, have it go in different spots, that's fine. But in the x-axis, I'm going to pick that it's a random 0 to 240. And if you think about it, for left and right, that'll basically make it so that it can go anywhere from right here over to around the edge of the screen. Then for my y-axis, the pick random right here, I'm going to make it so that it can go from negative 140 to positive 140. And put that in the y-axis oval, and that'll make it so that it can go anywhere from about this level right here down to about this level right here. So again, in this kind of box circle that I'm drawing right here, that is the available area by putting in those numbers into random functions for the x and y axes that it will glide to, and it'll be different every time. Okay, so to continue with our code, when it receives some motion, so you give it a little wave where you flick your hand or wave over here on the tennis ball, we have the glide. Then we are going to broadcast a message in events. We're going to go down to broadcast, and remember, a broadcast makes it so that all the other sprites will get triggered, will get a signal, and go down with a drop down, create a new message, and call it fetch or play, whatever you would like. Now, okay, and we broadcasted that message. Now, I want it to play a sound when that ball gets thrown, and with the tennis ball, there's kind of a pop sound like a tennis ball would make. Sounds like. So I'm going to use that. If you want to use a different sound or no sound at all, that is fine, but I'm going to go to my Sounds tab, Play Sound, and change that to Pop until done. And then I'm going to do a wait, but it's not going to be just the regular wait for a number of seconds. It's going to be a wait until. All right, so that tennis ball will sit and wait until, and then we need to go to sensing, and we're going to add the very first one that says touching, and right now its drop down says mouse pointer, but we want to change that to the pet or the monkey. So that ball will wait there until it's touched by the monkey, and what this will make it look like is the ball gets thrown, it waits for a second, the monkey goes and gets it, and then the next code that we write will make it look like the monkey throws it back. So we need to go back to motion. We want a glide for 1 second 2 in an X and Y position. And that X and Y position we want to be the same as the starting point. So I would check and see, and I've zoomed into different parts, but when the green flag was clicked, my starting point was 224, negative 159. And that's the same thing that's in there. If it happened to be different for some reason, you just check at what your starting coordinates were, which is where the position is right down here, and make it go back to the exact same spot. We'll make it look like the monkey threw it back. I want to play that sound pop one more time. You could, you don't have to do a different sound, no sound at all. That's fine. I just like these little added touches. And then I want to change the size back, because if I don't, it will make it so that this button is way too big. So if you remember up here, I increased the size from 40% to 80%. I want to put it back to 40. So go to looks, a little bit down to set size to 40%. And the last thing for the animation is to switch the costume back to the button, which for me is costume 1. And we also want to, even though that ends the animation and everything we want to happen, we also want to turn the camera off after we've done that. So let's go to video sensing and turn video to off. Okay, and that takes care of all of our coding for the play button itself and everything that it needs to do. Now we just need to add in a little sequence of events for the monkey to do something. So over in your sprite section, go to monkey. Find a blank area right here so we can go ahead and add just a few blocks and start it off with an event of when it receives that message. Okay, so let's go to the event section, and now when I receive, let's bring that over, and we've used it before with the others, but now we want it to be fetch or play, whatever you decided to name it. So when I receive fetch, and we just need a few small things to happen. First, we're going to do a motion, and we're going to use a go to, and right now it says random position, but we're going to change that in the drop down to fetch. So that's the tennis ball, right? Or if you chose to draw a bone or use something different from the sprite library, when it receives the message fetch, it will go to wherever that object is. It might be more on the top, bottom, left, right. It'll go to that correct spot every time. I'm going to play a sound to make it look like the monkey has fun. And go to my sounds tab, bring over a play sound, that chi-chi sound. I'm going to do a wait for 1 second, just so that sometimes you have to slow down the events because the animation happens too fast. So a wait here works really well, just to make the monkey pause for a second. And then the last block he needs is just to go back to his starting point. Now, we know the monkey's starting point by looking at the sprite properties here, 75 and 90. We could go find our setup or initialization block of when the green flag is clicked. We have, oh, actually it's negative 50 and 71. So that's the last thing I want to do is a go to with the X and Y coordinates, -50 and 71. Put him right back where he started. Okay, so that is ready. That is complete. That is everything that we need to make that happen. And you can test yours out now. I might switch and get a little video capture from a different computer showing it in the finished product because I'm on a computer right now. I can't use the camera. But if you run yours, if you go ahead and wave over top of that fetch button and where the ball is, it should launch that ball and have everything complete like we want it to. I'll make one little side note. When I was coming up with this project and setting it up, I realized a slight thing in that because both Fetch and Pet Me use the camera, it is possible that when you click on one of them, the other event happens if they're motion. And let me show you what I mean. Let's say you clicked on Fetch and you're waiting for motion to occur here, or you're raising up your hand for motion to occur right here on the screen. But let's say your head is up here and you happen to move your head around a little bit. It could make that little animation also so that the monkey's getting petted. And same thing vice versa if you were going to pet me and you moved around down here. Now, there is a way I found to fix it, but to tell you the truth, it's way more complicated than it's worth. We would have to go through a whole nother sequence of coding, add in a couple other things, do it a couple different ways, change a couple things around, and really, I don't see it as being that big of a deal in having a nice working project and still being able to use those video controls. So just remember, if you press Pet Me, to try to not have any motion happening over here. And if you press fetch, try not to have any motion happening on the monkey. And if it does, it's no big deal. It's still working. It's still fine. It's just the solution is a little more than it's worth. So with that, we now have a completed virtual pet. And this would be the next checkpoint where if you want to stop right now, you can. You can be done. This is a complete, finalized, working version. You can go ahead and make sure it's saved now by pressing that if you need to. Click share and add it to the studio. And if you do all that, that is wonderful, and that would be a completed project. You can stop right here and end it. I will say, for anybody still interested, there is one final thing, and it is the final thing, and that is to add a happiness meter. So, if you stop right now, no problem. If you continue, shouldn't take too long, should actually be pretty quick. And we're going to add a happiness meter that's basically going to go down every once in a while, but then increase back up every time you do one of these actions. And it's really, really simple to do. So, for those of you sticking around, for those of you who want to complete that last part, let's go ahead and do it. Won't take very long. We're still on our monkey sprite and find a small open area. We want to add an event. That's going to be when the green flag is clicked. And in this series of things, this series of events, we want it so basically every few seconds there is a happiness number and it goes down. So we need to do that through a variable. Let me delete this because I had already made it before, but I'll make it like yours where it's not there. So when we're on the variable section, we want to make a variable and call it happiness. Or if you thought of something else to call it, no problem. Okay, it'll show that variable by default, have the check mark by default, and we want that. And what we need to do when this green flag is clicked is set the happiness to a number. Now, you could really do any number. If you start with 0, you're going to be going to the negatives a lot. If you start at 100, it's going to stay really high a lot. 50 would be in the middle. In my experiments, I said that 70 was a good number to start it at. That's just my opinion. So I started my happiness at 70 each time. If you want to make it something different, experiment, see what you think. And then we need, in the control section, a forever block. Okay? This is going to happen the whole time the program is running. We want it to wait and then decrease the number. Wait, and then decrease the number. So let's make that happen with a wait right here. Instead of 1 second, which would be really fast, let's change that to 4 seconds. And then from the variables again, we want to change the happiness by, so let's drag that over into the forever block under wait, and let's change it by 4, or I should say a -4, going down every time. So every 4 seconds, that number will decrease by 4. If you made that number -10, -15, the happiness would go down really quickly. If you made it like a -1, it would go down really slowly and there kind of be no point. If you made it a positive number, then it would always just be going up. So again, negative number, I think 4 is good. If you made it 5, if you made it 6, no big deal. Okay, and then all we need to do is go to each of our actions, and when they complete, add the same thing to the bottom of each one. So let me start at my top where I have feed. You can go in any order you want, but this is when I receive feed. This was my chain of events for feed. And I'm just going to drag over a change happiness by. And in my experiments, I think 3, the number 3, positive 3, works best for each one. The change number, change happiness by positive 3. And I'm just going to keep adding that in for each one. Here's my one for pet. I'm going to add that in, change happiness by, change it to 3. I'm going to go and find my others. I need to do it for fetch right here, change happiness by 3. And I believe I have one more on this page, which is sleep. Drag over a change happiness by. You could zoom out too if you needed to find any or see any and that was giving you a hard time. So I did it for sleep, change happiness by a 3. And then the only one that we need to do on the actual sprite is the one for drink, because that code worked better being on the actual sprite itself. And we can add in a change happiness by and change it to 3. And if you want to play with those numbers, you want to make them a little different, see how it works, it's no problem. But with that, remember I said that would be quick and simple. Our project is now 100%. So right now, look to see if you need to save it. Press save now if you do. And go ahead and test that program. Okay, after he says his hello, he does his he, and you see that number start to go down. It went to a 66, then a 62, and every 4 seconds it'll decrease unless we do these different actions below, and each time it will raise it up. Okay, I'm not going to do the ones with video, but I'll do my drink, I'll do my sleep, and we could do the video ones too, and each one would increase his happiness. If you find that those numbers are hard to keep up, you could change the happiness by 4 each time and go back and change them. You could make the happiness go down slower, whatever you would like. But like you see in other apps that have virtual pets and virtual beings, and in some games and stuff where you have to keep somebody's health or energy or level up, it works in the same way. All right? So, ladies and gentlemen of 5th through 8th grade, if you have done this all with me, that is wonderful. That is awesome. That is amazing. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that you like working in Scratch and making Scratch projects. I find them really fun. If you haven't yet, go and press that share button. On the next page, press Add to Studio, and I can't wait to see what you guys made. All right, have a great day.